Well, everyone, I want to welcome you to this panel discussion where we'll be talking about television's evolutionary digital transition and its effects on consumer behavior. And boy, we've got a great panel set up with three pretty esteemed television executives. They're going to lend their background and insights into this topic. And by way of background, I'm currently a graduate student at Texas State University. And this is from one of my final projects, Digital Media Issues, for a class that I'm taking. But the goal is eventually when I graduate to be like Evan when I grow up and maybe actually get a chance to teach on the collegiate level. So Evan, you're my benchmark, my man. So what I'd like to do is just briefly, if we could, just go around the horn and have you all just sort of give your elevator speeches on who you are and your background, and then we'll just kind of get right into it. And why don't we start with ladies first? Bridget, would you tell us who you are?
Of course, I'm Bridget Baker, and I spent most of my career at NBC Universal in the cable division, helping to launch their first cable network, which was CNBC, and spent many years there, eventually running the entire subscription revenue business, and was there about 23 years. And then in the last well, gosh, it's been almost 10 years, I guess. I have been doing a number of things. I've learned it's called a portfolio career. So consulting, running an advisory practice called Baker Media, serving on public corporate boards as well as private corporate boards, and helping longtime colleagues like Bruce do things like this.
Thank you very much. That sounds great. Evan, why don't we jump over to you?
My name's Evan Shapiro. I've run television networks, IFC, Sundance Channel. I've helped create streaming services called CISO for NBC Universal. I've produced a bunch of television, including Portlandia, and This Film Is Not Yet Rated, and Please Like Me. In recent years, I've pivoted and become, again, much like Bridget said, a portfolio executive. I teach at two different universities, NYU and Fordham University. I write about the media universe. I'm known in some circles as the media universe cartographer because I map the shape and dimensions of the media universe. And I use data and to do that, to drive that infographic-led business. But I write in depth on a newsletter called Media War and Peace about the media universe. And then I also do a lot of consulting with clients throughout the media universe, both here and in Europe.
Great background. Thank you. Now, no relation because the Shapiro was pronounced Shapiro, not Shapiro. We have Doug Shapiro.
I wish we were related. I call him Cuz on LinkedIn just to create some confusion. But so the elevator version is I have never run a cable network, but otherwise a lot of similarities with Bridget and with Evan. So I've been in and around the media business about 30 years. I was an analyst for 15 years on Wall Street covering basically up and down the video value chain. And then I went to Time Warner. I was there for 12 years. I ran investor relations, a bunch of strategy roles. And my last role was running strategy for Turner. And then I left shortly after the ill-fated AT&T Warner Media merger, Time Warner merger. And since then, I've been doing a bunch of things. I spent 18 months on a failed SPAC. That was super fun. And now I am also writing. I write a Substack called The Mediator. And doing a bunch of advisory work. I'm also a senior advisor for Boston Consulting Group.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you all. Appreciate it. And I'd love to just get right into it. Since we're going to be talking about the historical evolution of digital, I think it's probably best to maybe take a step back before we go forward and just give a brief overview about the global transition from analog to digital back in the 1990s. Bridget, would you mind kind of kicking this off for us based on your experience and what you saw?
Not at all. I don't know that it's a global perspective since I was very much immersed in the America business of cable. But yeah, I guess in a couple of sentences, what I might say is I was one of those people pounding the pavement at every head end across America, trying to, have NBC, which was very much arm's length as a broadcaster to most cable operating companies. They didn't particularly want to do business with broadcasters, and trying to convince these. And by the way, let me pause and say that in the early 90s, there were not 8 major distributors. There were about 6,000 distributors divided up in the nation by zip code and city franchise agreements. So you were dealing with independent entrepreneurial people in many, 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 many communities and states that were all different. And the idea was many of these people were building out, that was the term, their cable operations from what might have been, again, colloquial phrases, a 330 megahertz system to a 750 megahertz system, to eventually being able to launch what then also was referred to as hits or head end in the sky. And that's what provided many, many cable operators with their very first digital channels. So in a span of a very short period of time, if you want to cite it as the early 90s and 20 years later, it's been an absolute revolution in terms of how content is delivered, distributed, and technologically formatted from being an analog cable channel to a digital stream.
Perfect. Well said. Thank you. Thank you. Anything to add, gentlemen, or should we keep moving?
I think people forget how much the back end tech of television has changed. I mean, we know it's fragmented audiences and fragmented experiences, and we're on new devices and we're on new apps, and the model keeps changing, not always working, but always changing. And I think in the end, I mean, I've done a lot of research and work on things like how do you the process of getting apps to all the various devices, and the tech stack, and now the data tech stack that goes in behind, the changing television landscape. And, as Bridget, enumerated, it's not always what gets thought of when you think about the transformation of television. And there's looming problems. When all the television homes in the United States start streaming almost exclusively 24 hours a day, I don't know that our infrastructure can handle it. If you've ever noticed one of your apps lagging or crashing, that's with today's usage. Imagine when it's literally 100% of television homes, or at least in most, high-end areas. I don't know that we've adapted the infrastructure. There's going to be a bottleneck of data at some point. And I think, we have to keep, it's not just about the shows and the apps and the brands. It's also about how does the TV get to you?
That's great. Thanks, Evan. Doug?
It's an interesting question because it's a potentially really broad question. So I'll give a broader answer that even extends beyond TV. But, prior to the advent of digital, there was no common language between different kinds of media, right? So like in nature, sounds and images happen analog. And so in an analog world, there's no common, the atomic unit of a photograph, pre-digital, and a song, they're different, right? So what the advent of digital did is it created a common language for all information goods, which is bits, right? Now everything is bits. And once everything is on this, there's a universality of bits in the sense that they're the standard unit for all, storage, transport, processing, regardless of the network, regardless of the device, regardless of the application. And so by creating this universal language of information goods, it set the stage for all future innovation in all the innovation that we know in media today. Really started with that big bang of digitization. So it really depends on how you're even asking the question, what you mean when you ask the question. But, the fact that you can compress video, right? The idea of digital video and having a more consistent image quality. And then digital was a necessary precondition for the internet, which if you didn't have a universal language for information goods, you'd have no internet, right? So now we have the internet. The internet, prior to the internet, it was very expensive to distribute media because you needed to own the underlying infrastructure, but the internet unbundled the information from the infrastructure. And so that's what was the, catalyst for Netflix and YouTube and like all the stuff we talk about today. So if you step back from your question, it's like, digitization was the big bang moment in the media business that everything we talk about now really stems from that.